A lot. Right,
Oh
Brian?
yeah.
Are we
Okay,
ready to get
excellent.
started?
Yep, we're here.
Let's do it. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Coaching to Flourish podcast. I am your host, John Andrew Williams. Today, I am here with Ashley Scott. Raj is away this week. And welcome. Welcome to our
Woo!
live Q&A.
Yeah, hey everybody. Happy Tuesday. So excited to be here again. These are so fun to get to connect with the community on here. So thanks, John, for having me. We have
It's
some questions.
I
Yeah.
am I am loving these. I look forward to this so much every week. And yes, just thank you, community, for being here. And let's get to it. Let's get to our questions.
Yeah, cool. So some of these questions are related to our blog topics that we've recently had go out. So I would encourage any of you listening, if you want to learn more, that's a great stop is to head over to our blog, and there's some more information and research and things on some of these topics for you to be able to dive into, or continue to ask us questions about it as well. But we have gotten some questions recently related to those topics. So the first question is going to be, what are some tips to achieving flow?
Right. I I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, both in my own life and in research. And one of the things I'm fascinated with is this idea of setting structures and doing some sort of warm up. I feel like there's an element of uh, I think a lot of students, and I know when thinking back to high school and in college, when I was doing academic work, like when you think back to academic work, uh, there's that time when you're like, let's say you're doing math or you're doing you're writing, and you just feel like, okay, now you're in it, now you're taking steps forward. It usually takes about 5 to 10 minutes to get into something.
Mhm.
And when we work with when, when I've been working with Britt to do a lot of the research on the 2.0, we consciously talk about writing warm-ups where you have to warm up for it. And you think about it, it's a little bit like an athletic exercise where you don't immediately put on your shoes and then hit the trail or the gym or whatever you do and get immediately into it. Like there's an easing into this process. We need to have that same sort of compassion for ourselves whenever we're expecting flow to happen, like right from the get-go, where you have to have a mini sort of almost like a routine or a ritual or some sort of grounding practice, prayer work, uh, maybe a meditation, something, something to get you into that space. And then to focus on that, it's almost like if, let's say, flow is like step 10, you're really, with your routine, you're trying to get the halfway there. Like just maybe get halfway, get into the routine, and then don't even think about, am I in flow, until maybe you're 10 minutes into your routine.
Mhm.
That's what I found to be a pretty consistent thing. So the question to ask yourself is, do you have a flow, like a pre-flow routine? If the answer is no, then make one and try it. And if the answer is yes, then use it. And then you can, then if you have a pre-flow routine, then you can start to link it to other things where you say, okay, I want to do my pre-flow routine while, and link that with having that second cup of tea or coffee or whatever it is. You start linking it to different things, and then you're into habit linking again. That seems to be a pretty robust. Research supports that. A lot of the students I've worked with, uh, the the clients I've worked with, it supports that as a robust practice.
Yeah, that's so good. The pre-flow flow.
You have
um,
one, Ashley. We've talked about it. You got
yeah,
a pretty robust routine going on.
yeah, there's some structure. I one thing I was thinking too is what am I spending my time on outside of that flow state that I'm trying to get into. And so if I'm trying to tap into more of my creative space and I really want to set up a flow there, if I'm spending a significant number of time on social media instead of reading or doing like some of the things that bring me joy outside of that time, it's going to be a lot harder for me to get into that flow state. And so that's one thing I was thinking about when you're talking is what is taking a place around that flow state too. Even like how are you pouring into yourself in order to allow flow to flow.
Yeah, I think having boundaries around it, like having thinking of it like a something that you would do in an athletic competition or something like, okay, this is my start, this is the pre-routine time, this
Mhm.
is my workout, and this is my cool down. That's a really helpful structure to have. And then I think what I find is when, let's say we're doing some pretty heavy writing, and the research and the 2.0 stuff starts coming up, I find I get into like writing shape. I feel like I get into like flow shape, and so constantly I'm thinking about how can I take what's happening, like, so this is the larger thing, and how can I break it down into smaller pieces. I mean, this is like goal setting like 101, like you'll break it down to smaller pieces, but it's surprising how that gets lost a lot. Like
Mhm.
I sometimes lose that for myself and try to jump like from 0 to 10 right away. uh, and I have to really work at thinking, okay, so I'm going to write this first. I'm just going to handwrite. I'm just going to handwrite the ideas down, and then once I handwrite, then I'm going to highlight, and then I'm going to maybe do a dictation, and then maybe I'm going to then start typing, and then talk about it with someone else. Like, so there are so many other smaller steps in that process that I feel like, um, if there's something that's really, like, if people are feeling stuck, they're like, like a lot of the time, I don't even know what percentage, but a lot of the time, maybe half, it's they're they're trying to go from 0 to 10, or there's too big of a chunk, a step in there. um, you have to bring it way down, chunk it way down. And then the other idea is, if this is something that's really important to you, like, truly important to you, how willing are you to start again, or to back up and think, okay, so we were good until this point, let me take it from this point again. It's asking yourself, how worth it is this, is the larger goal. And if it's not worth it, then you might need to shift your goal. You might need to think, okay, this isn't. And if it is worth it, then shift the mindset around, if I don't achieve it yet, then let me try something else. And it's that word "yet" can be so powerful, in that process of getting to that larger thing.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful because I think a lot of times when we have a specific idea or a goal that we want to accomplish, and if we're not getting there, we keep hitting these roadblocks, then we just say, well, this is not for me, or I'm going to give up, or there's some kind of shame cycle. I'm not capable. I can't do this. And so I really like that idea of asking those questions if you feel like you come to that, because it is obtainable, but it might be a little bit of a shift like you're talking about. And I love that. I think a lot more people will accomplish that state of flow or get to the other side of it with that curiosity, more so than, oh man, here I am again, like at this block and there's no way around it. I can't do this. So that's really cool, John.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have more, but let's go for the next one. Let's go for the
Okay,
next one. Yeah.
cool. The next question is, how does brainstorming maximize potential?
There, well, first, there are. Uh, well, I got excited about when I was researching brainstorming, how many different kinds of brainstorming there are.
Mm.
And I I really like the two kinds that, so the two kinds that I've been playing with. The first is, I'll call it random brainstorming, which is what most people think of when they think of brainstorming. It's just, let me just get all the ideas out, and I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to even think about them. I'm just going to get curiosity, just get that creativity going. Uh, I think what's really useful about that is it's an exercise that separates the creation of the idea from the judgment of the idea. And anytime you can separate creation from judgment, good things are going to happen. Useful things are going to happen. The other kind of brainstorming, which I love, is this idea of edge crafting. And it's the idea of, can I work an idea and then take it to the next level and then the next level. And this is essentially, thinking about academic life coaching. It's okay. Can I get trained in, life coaching and then apply it to young people, students? Yes, cool. Can I then train people can I establish my own private practice? Can I prove, yes, like you can make a living, you can as an individual, have a sustainable practice that supports you? Yes. That's making change? Yes. Can I then train people to do that? Yes. Can I train whole schools to do that? Yes. Well, now can we train school districts? What about a whole state? What about a whole nation? What about the whole world? What if every teacher were a trained academic life coach? That just was part of teacher training. It's that kind of thinking, it's that edge crafting, like how can I take this to the very edge? And you think, okay, so why stop at teachers? What if teachers actually taught coaching concepts and then students left, their high schools as a complete, with coaching skills? Not to necessarily, not to become coaches, but coaching is something, the skill set of coaching is so useful to any other area of someone's life. It's more like, it's training in listening, empathy, leadership, creating visions, really organizing that internal space. This is the construct that will help students organize that internal space. So when you start to edge craft, it's taking the one idea and then just moving it to the next, like upping it in that level. So it's brainstorming down a specific path. This kind of thinking, it requires a separation from that critic, that inner critic, or how is it going to happen? No, those things you just got to just push them out for a little bit, get clear on the vision, and then it really is okay. So what would be the next step? What's the next step? And that's to me is a very exciting. That's a very exciting way to brainstorm.
Yeah, that's awesome. It reminds me, the visual that I saw was, the idea mapping, where you have the idea, you circle it, and then you branch off. So you branch off to do exactly what you're doing. Okay, so from here, this moves to here. Okay, where else can I take this? And it constantly just kind of grows into this, I guess it's kind of a tree as well, but that was a visual. I was like, oh, I think that's so helpful, and something, if somebody is like, okay, I want to do this, like I need to do exactly what John's talking about, I think that's a great starting point, is to just get it on paper and allow yourself to see it and just roll with that. Because I've been shocked when I do that kind of mapping system, when I have an idea, what else comes up and what I get really excited about that I didn't even realize that I was interested in or excited about. And that might end up being like a shift for me and get me motivated to do the thing that I want to do. And so I think that's really cool. And that judgment piece, I think putting aside is really important as well. Allow yourself to dream.
Absolutely. It's a separation of creation and judgment that is useful. And it's also useful to have judgment later. I think judgment is the most useful when it's combined with metrics, where if you can try to measure something and then look at and then ask yourself the question, what's useful about judgment and what's not useful about judgment. The not useful part is, I feel like it stifles creativity, and then it can also induce shame. And working with a coach around those two things, around, okay, so how do I want to handle it when it comes up? When I'm looking at something and I realize, this isn't where I want it to be yet. It can be really challenging, to feel that, almost having a game plan. Okay, so the game plan around judgment, how do I want to game plan this? I think when in this idea of, all these emotions, it's really useful to think in terms of useful, not useful, or what about this is useful, and there are, and then what about this is not useful. Like, for instance, sometimes it's not useful to lean into creativity. Sometimes you really do need to lean into judgment, rather than say, let me just try it again. Let me tweak this. Let me change this. Let me change that. Let me change that, without really creating metrics or judgment. So I done that several times. Maybe I still do that, but it's, you're asking yourself, okay, so what kind of system do I need to put in place here to handle most of the things that come up? And I mean, yeah, that is the life coaching perspective.
Yeah, that's awesome, John. I don't have anything else to add to that. That rocked. Well, got the next question. Can academic coaching help my students deal with the difficult social aspects in public school, such as bullying, peer pressure, etc.?
Yeah. I think this is a symptom of the failure of our current ideas around education that highlights content over kindness. And I see it a lot. I've worked with some students who've had, as their coach when they're dealing with these kind of things. First, I just feel tremendous sadness. And I feel like we're wasting so much talent that we aren't even aware of. It's just really rough. And the system doesn't, I think the system, it's like it puts too much pressure on students. It judges them harshly. The system of grades and all of those, all those things that surround that. I think it places a lot of stress on students, and that stress has to come out someplace. And unfortunately, students, I think, who fall into bully patterns, the same things are happening in their own lives oftentimes. And it's like that negative emotion, that negative cycle needs to go. It needs to come someplace. We don't really have good structures in our society for how to deal with it. And the bullying problem I see is a fundamental problem, is one of the fundamental problems in education. But I don't think of it as, I don't think it's a root cause. I think it's a symptom of education, focusing on grades as opposed to kindness. And if we taught kindness in schools, that would be amazing. And that's what we used to do in kindergarten. It was around kindness, but then there's this pressure now for even kindergartners to read, which is fine, but not every kindergartner is ready for it yet developmentally. And I've known students who didn't really read until like first or second grade, but then they go on to become valedictorians. And I feel like our system, it's meant to stifle that even more and more. On a one-on-one basis, can coaching help students deal with bullying on a one-on-one basis? Absolutely, yes. And I think what I've seen help is when you're working with students, for them to separate whatever, to realize that the narrative that the bully wants to use is not them, that they can choose to not adopt that narrative. And that's empowering. If it is to the case where you think, this is beyond, this is really affecting safety, this is not okay, then you as a coach can take actions, contact people, contact parents, contact schools. That can be useful as well. I've never had to go that distance. I'm trying to think. It's been a little bit. I think there have been a couple of times I've contacted parents. Most of the times parents that I've worked with have been on it as well. Like it's a known thing going into this. And most of the students I've worked with, let's say 60% of them have been high school students. And some of the mindsets that they've got into is, I just need to get through this and go off to college and everything will be okay. That feels unsatisfying. I mean, now it gets me really fired up. Bullying is it's a symptom. We need to emphasize more kindness in schools. Period.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that immediately came to mind is the opportunity that coaching provides for someone to understand their inherent value. And I know we've talked about this before. I'm big on understanding our value and understanding our worth. And similar to what you're saying, this idea of the narrative of a bully and us and our choice within that. And part of our ability to be able to make that choice to say that is not me is to understand ourselves and understand our value. And coaching offers an opportunity for students to be able to say, this is who I am, and own it for themselves, knowing that whoever they are, they have value, and that each person has so many incredible qualities that make them valuable, that are unique to them, every person. And so to know that and understand that and live that out fully is huge, especially if I think about in elementary school or middle to high school, having a life coach to be able to identify those things. There's a lot of things as an adult that that I've had to process and work through as an adult, that I think, man, if I would have been able to know that then, nip that in the bud, or some of the boys' narratives that I heard when I was younger, like how different it would have been as an adult. And I think you're right. There's some things where, even for myself personally, I put aside thinking, oh, it's okay. And, but learning some of the stories that I have told myself based on certain things. And so it can be incredibly powerful to be able to know your value at a young age. To be able to come at that with that is like a powerful force for yourself internally. But I think when you have that view for yourself and the understanding for yourself and empathy for yourself, it just overflows into all of the interactions, which then inspires other students and other kids to know their value. And they see you when somebody walks in and says, like, this is who I am. Kids pick up on these things. They're so smart. And they want that for themselves as well. So yeah, that was great, John. I think that's really great insight into that.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, it gets me going. It gets me thinking of like how like it feels like a race. Like we're racing against a lot of the older narratives that I feel like need to go away. Like they're and I see it even now. I see it sometimes, like when when you're on playgrounds and you're asking, you're seeing different values being emphasized. Where, as a society, you ask yourself, like, do I value success over kindness? What's more important?
Yeah.
It's a big deal. That's not an easy question sometimes to answer. And I think that our society often values success. I mean, yes, like it's there. And sometimes people will say, well, kindness is weakness. Compassion is weakness. Empathy is weakness. Vulnerability is weakness. This is why Brene Brown is so popular and why her message is so right on, is because she's challenging this narrative of vulnerability being weakness. So I think that we have some work as a society to do in really asking ourselves, can we be kind and compassionate to each other?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean weakness. I think instead we've been conditioned to jump to judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing the effects of it, I mean, politically, especially around the world. Look at the scope of human history. It's not encouraging. It's not encouraging. But when you look at what is encouraging are the one-on-one interactions when you're looking at coaching, and what the mission of coaching is to bring more of these things to the world.
Mm-hmm.
That is encouraging. And when you start getting groups of people working together like this, it's hard. It's a challenge for sure to stay in kindness, empathy, compassion. But it doesn't mean weakness,
One of the things I love about it too is that it's something that grows the more that we lean into it as well. And that we can continue to grow in empathy and compassion and kindness. And I think the more we lean into it, the more that we give that out as well. And I love that it can be also learned in a lot of ways. And I think that's a beautiful piece to it. You don't have to stop in it. You can continue to lean in and actually see a lot more impact and transforming power because of it. And I love that too.
Thanks, Ashley. It's fun to have you here on these lives.
Thanks, Don. It's so good to be here. I love these lives. Everybody, I get to kind of be in the background and listen normally. And I'm like learning so much when I listen to Raj and you and Ale has been on here, and we have guest speakers. So thank you for allowing me to be in this space. It's a lot of fun. I always learn a lot. Even now I'm like, man, okay, I got some things to walk away with right now.
I know. Me too. For me, it helps. I mean, it's lovely to articulate like a lot of these ideas and emotions that are like in this, in my headspace.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good structure for me as well to think about, okay, yeah, this is coaching, like and to be re-reminded of the mission of Coach Training EDU. Like, I have a lot of structures to do that. This is a strong one. This is one where I leave like super pumped up every Tuesday thinking, yeah, like we need to go, like, okay, people, like let's change the world, because it's real in this, it's exciting because that inner work is real. The inner work, it sometimes is invisible, but that doesn't mean that it's not powerful. Mm-hmm. And when you can start to harness those, those bits of flow in your own, like we can start to harness those bits of flow. What I found is that kindness that we extend to others, we also extend to ourselves. Kindness becomes a habit, and we become kinder. Inner critics start to also get on board, and that's I've seen it both as a coach, myself experience it, and then also when I'm coaching others as clients. Like it can save someone's life seems too dramatic, but it can really change a trajectory of, let's say, a decade in someone's life.
100%. Yeah. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Ashley. Thanks everyone for being here, for listening again. This has been another Coaching to Flourish podcast. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. Take care.